easement and right of way. Submitted by Council Doucette. So, we have Council Landis here in the chambers, and we have...
Your mic's not on.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, and we have, we have Don Landis in chambers, and we have Councilor Roby on Teams. So I will call to make sure everybody is awake and ready to go. Councilor Roby.
Councilor Roby is present.
Councilor Landis.
Council Landis is present and wide awake.
Thank you. And I am somewhat awake. All right, so who wants to go first? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So let me just give you a little bit of background about this amendment to the order. Basically, there's a couple of factors going on, like a lot of things that come up. You know, it starts with a complaint from a constituent as far as trying to get a fencing done within my development. That was eventually resolved, but as part of this, we took a close look at what needed to get straightened out to address fencing in the city. The long and short of it is, the way the zoning's set up, it's an exclusive zoning principle. So if you're not allowed to do it, you need to get a permit. And the problem is, you know, technically, any fence would require a permit. And what this is doing is saying, look, there's a certain set of fences that you shouldn't require a permit based upon size, distance away from, the minimum front and all that. So I made a quick little presentation. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay. So again, this is more to do with, the restrictions on fencing is too broad. Try to get limited size and basically, and I heard this even before last year, a couple of years ago, technically you're supposed to have supposed to pull a permit for any garden fence, which no one does. It becomes a scofflaw. The other issue that came up is with easements, as I was getting into conversations. Basically, if you have an easement in a property, you can reject any fence proposed to that property, regardless of where it's located on the property. Now, it makes sense if that fence is going to interfere with your easement. It doesn't make sense if it's on the other side of the property. So that was getting clarified as well. That's kind of the long and short of it. What has happened over the last couple of days is some wording changes for the description of where the fences can be. If you want to go to the next slide. This is the original proposal that was submitted back in February. It was referring to section 650-47N and talked about the erected fence outside of the minimum front. If you go to the next slide, then basically what we've done is kind of clarified. First is that 47 was not the appropriate section, should have been 45. Also clarifying that the fence is not located in the minimum front, side, or rear yard access. So basically, if you're putting up a fence that fits these criteria, you don't need to pull a permit. So it just kind of simplifies the process. And then the other one was basically to address the easement. So that's about it.
Wow, great to hear. Councilor Landis, do you have any comments?
Well, I guess, Councilor Doucette, was this an issue that was brought up in your neighborhood or your ward or what?
Yes, it was. Specifically in my neighborhood. So the streets are private streets, and in one section of my neighborhood, there was an old stockade fence that was falling apart that abutted the street, that everyone, it was built when the neighborhood was built. And he went to get a building permit to replace it, and that's what created a big brouhaha. So, I worked it over with the building inspector. The fence was still installed, but this is kind of, okay, let's clean this up to make sure it doesn't happen for other spaces. This is about, visibility in public space, and I completely agree that's the issue. But if you're away from the public space, there should be no constraints about fencing.
So what happened to the stockade fence?
It got replaced with the vinyl fence.
I know. And
Could I-
you
could I-
did get a building permit?
You, an opinion, Counselor?
Sure. Pam?
The issue comes down to, and it's not only in Counselor Doucette's ward, it comes down to a question of interpretation. And previously, years ago, we made the determination that if you were putting a fence around your garden, or you were putting a little fence around to keep your little dog in your backyard, we didn't care about it, and we didn't require permits. Additionally, we also made the interpretation, and this was the then commissioner's interpretation, that if you were putting up a fence and it was over an easement, we just needed permission from the easement holder, that the rest of the fence could go up. It only had to do with the easement. Unfortunately, because it's been badly worded in the past, the interpretation became much stricter over the last couple of years, where we were making determinations and asking for permits when we never had before, and we were denying permits that we never had before. And I think that the work that Councilor Doucette has done has just simply clarified it so that moving forward, any building commissioner or any building inspector or code enforcement officer knows and understands what the regulations meant to me and what they actually are.
Mr. Chair, this is Councilor Roby.
Yes, I didn't see your hand wave, so I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. I wasn't ever sure if people see hands. And I wasn't sure if Councilor Landers was finished. He sort of got quiet, so I don't want to interrupt if he's still asking questions.
Councilor Landers' name come up again. Keep track of that.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Councilor Landers.
No, I just asked a question. I was through.
He was joking around, that's all.
I was just kidding.
Okay,
I'm trying to get you to
so
stop.
I guess my concern is the code says fences need permits. So the fact that they haven't been, to me, is not a good thing. But this confuses me when I read it, and even the change that was made by the building commissioner to be outside to be inside, and now it's not located. So when you reference 65041, which is the yard sizes, the lot location, lot coverage location, to me has nothing to do with a fence. It just tells you where you can put a building, or where you can put pavement, or where you can put a swimming pool. And there's lot lines that you have to meet. You can put a fence on your property line if you choose to, although it's recommended that you don't because of issues of getting behind it to do whatever. So you put it close to the lot line. You can also put it 15 feet in if you want to, but so if I read this, a fence not exceeding 3 feet in height, which is, and complies with 650, chapter 650, 45N. Now 45N are site distances. So if I go to that chart that shows, and I'll use my own property as an example, I live on a corner. So I have to meet that site distance. I can't put a fence up around my garden that's within, I believe it's 15 feet of the corner, and it can't be more than 2 feet tall, according to that. So I guess it's not exceeding 3 feet that meets that. But if you're not going to require fence, if you haven't been, maybe that's the problem, but if you're not going to require fence permits, then I could go and stick a 5-foot fence out there, and then it's going to be code enforcement that's going to come and tell me now I have to take it down, where it would have been the fence permit that would have told me what I should have put up to begin with. So aren't we just opening up another can of worms if we don't follow the code and make people get, I mean, I can see changing this to have garden fences, and I can see the change for the encroachment on the easement. but you're mixing the lot coverage for a fence. And that's the part that I just don't understand, what that has to do with it.
Are you all set? We
I
have,
think so.
okay, well, we have Ethan here, maybe he can explain a little bit.
So, the fences, all fences require permits, regardless of whether it's a garden fence or anything of that style. What this does is tries to eliminate the requirement of a small fence that's not within the setbacks of the area. So if you had a small 16-inch fence surrounding your herb garden directly behind your house that was not within any of the setbacks, you would be required to have a fence permit applied for and inspected, and the permit would need to be issued prior to the installation of your 18-inch tall fence.
And why is it any different that it's 18 versus a 6-foot fence around a swimming pool? It's still, the swimming pool can't be within, depending on where, I'll use my backyard, it can't be within 15 feet of my backyard. I've got a swimming pool. It now requires a fence, so I need a fence permit.
Actually, sorry, Counselor, but swimming pools are covered under the building code, and swimming pool fences are classified as barriers and are covered under the building code, and you don't use a fence permit for a fence. You use actually a building permit for a swimming pool fence.
So that's not a good example, but if I want to just fence in my yard because I want privacy.
Yes, then you would be within the setbacks of those areas. So if you were at the outer edge of your lot, you would be within the setbacks and require a fence permit.
Right, and so why is a garden fence any different just because it's only 2 feet tall or 3 feet is the not exceeding? You still need, if it's a 3-foot tall fence, my guess is you probably have to dig a fence pole hole. And so I guess that's the other question, that does the fence permit require people to make sure that when they're digging their post holes, that they're not going to dig into a sewer pipe, a water pipe, an electrical gas pipe? If you just let people put a fence up wherever they want, is that an issue?
You're required to have a fence permit for any fence you install currently, and it's always on anybody's best interest anytime they're doing any excavation work that they call the dig safe people, in order to ensure that they're not interfering with something that they don't want to come into contact with. And I would recommend anybody contact DigSafe before they excavate. It looks like Pam's got a question.
I don't have a question. With all due respect, Counselor, the fact that we in the past did not ask for permits is not a violation of the code. It was a determination by the then and the next 4 building commissioners that their interpretation of the law was that it wasn't required. The issue is anybody can go to Home Depot today and buy fencing that's 3 feet tall that just gets stuck in the ground. You don't have to dig post holes. You don't have to do anything like that. And I'm curious, or I'm concerned that we are, by asking for permits for every little thing like that, that we're over legislating people's ability to work in their yard.
Well, I guess we over legislate a lot of things in my opinion, but this is one that I find it fascinating that the code can be very specific, and then a building commissioner can say, oh, and we had this issue come up with several times that a building commissioner has made a ruling, and then a new building commissioner says, oh my God, why on earth did they ever do that? So I guess I get everybody wants to fence in their garden, but this language just, between the fact that it was outside, now it's inside, now it's not that at all, is, I don't understand the correlation between the lot coverage with the fence.
Okay.
And I had called and talked to Commissioner DePercio because I wanted to make sure I was understanding. He was going to actually write a letter. I think we'd gotten one from one of the other site managers. He's here.
Yep.
and has some comments to make, I think, from engineering.
So, yes, Tom, if you have any comments, and Sam, I know you had your hand up, so we'll get you. Yep. Go ahead, Tom.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did notice some of the corrections that have already been outlined, so that was helpful. Some of the misnotations of the code in the references. I think there's one other one that wasn't mentioned that is maybe part of Councilor Roby's confusion. I think in the second part, number 2 of the sort of the provisions in what doesn't need a permit. I think where it says section 650-41, I think that should be strucken out of this language altogether. You're just trying to refer to attachment 2, and if you just said as defined in chapter 650 zoning attachment 2, I think that would be correct. To pull in the lot coverage 650-41, I don't think you meant to do that, and I think that would take out some of that confusion. The other thing, just the site distance used in this context should be SIGHT. Just a typo on that one.
Okay, thank you. Council Roby, are you comfortable with that?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Are you comfortable with those small changes that Mr. DePercio?
Well, I guess my concern, and I was trying to find what I had taken off the website. If you look at the code at the 650 part, at the very beginning of it, it does say attachment 1, 2, and 3. And so I think that's where attachment 2 comes in, but attachment 2 is actually referenced in 650-41A, where it says, look at the end of this chapter for the chart. Well, it's not at the end of the chapter, it's actually attachment 2. So it is the same thing, and attachment 2 is the lot coverage. So it still gets to...
No,
No.
the attachment 2 is the setbacks. It also
okay.
includes the setbacks and the lot coverage, so it's inclusive.
Okay, is that there's...
Okay, Council Perlman, thank you for your patience. Go to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just a comment from the earlier discussion. I had also received some communication from residents regarding the fences earlier on and had reached out to Councilor Doucette, which helped spark some of this work, and had connected with the building department. So there is a concern, I think, for this to be addressed. And, I obviously leave it to the committee to determine the language, but just wanted to reiterate that this has been a concern in different neighborhoods across the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. We have our solicitor on the line. Jason, you comfortable with that as well?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Yes, it would be fine to, we can refer to attachment 2, and that's not a problem.
And strike out section 650-41?
Yes, that's fine.
And we'll change the wording to site, to SIGHT. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Councilor Doucette, I think you had a comment.
No, I think that the changes that we discussed clarifies the issue. This is all about putting out a straw dog, getting it upgraded to the right stuff, and making sure that it passes correctly. So I'm fine in the position where it is now.
Excellent. Well, I thought this meeting was gonna last 5 minutes, but I guess I lost the bet on that one. All right, well.
You
I
got
guess
40
I'll-
minutes to kill, how's that?
I guess I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I better make that motion, okay? I make a motion that we accept, as the amendment.
Is your mic on?
I'll make the motion that we, accept it as presented with the, we made two changes.
Very good. And I will second that motion. So if there's, so I guess, very good. So are we all in favor? I'll run the roll. So Councilor Roby,
Councilor Roby votes no.
Councilor Landers,
Council Landis votes yes.
and Councilor Tenera votes yes. So I guess it passes 2-1. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
I
You
second
gotta
that
start it.
motion. Councilor Roby, we're adjourning? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yep. Councilor Landers?
Yes.
Councilor Tenera votes yes. Very good. We are adjourned at 6:52. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining on the call. Appreciate it.